I'm happy to bring you some unusually good news. It's been a number of years since we've last reported a forecast improvement instead of a new or larger forecast gap. The story and the picture is one of stronger than expected revenues in prior years, somewhat lower spending in prior years and going into the future, offsetting some of the increased risks and offsetting the slower than expected growth in the economy. The state's current law delegates that money to the reserves, and so we've now got a cushion against some of the future risks that the state still has.
It's no secret that the U.S. economy and the U.S. economic outlook is worse than it was in February. Real GDP growth for the 2012-2013 biennium had been expected to average a little bit more than 3%. Now it's forecast at 1.7%. There's still plenty of risk out there. We're going to know some things by February, but the European crisis is not going to be solved by February. It's still going to be hanging out there as a potential problem. It's likely that next November, when you're meeting here, the European crisis will still be a problem as well. So that is a concern. And the other thing that I want to point out to you is that these forecasts aren't guarantees. You may have already figured that out. Normally, we have about a 3.8% plus or minus from this forecast to the revenues that we receive at the end of the biennium. That 3.8% variance, plus or minus, is about $1 billion, which is about the amount that we now have in the cash flow account and the reserve account.
While we've made some progress with this forecast because of slightly higher revenue projections and slightly lower spending, we still see a significant imbalance going forward, dropping from around $1.9 billion to about $1.3 billion, even before you take into account any effects of inflation. The reason is pretty simple. While we have a balanced budget for the current biennium, there are significant one-time resources in that. Those don't continue. So we still have challenges and work to go ahead. It is somewhat less than we had previously anticipated.
The U.S. economy is performing a little bit better than it was last summer when people were pretty unanimous saying that there was a 40% probability. And the real uncertainty is over what's going to happen in Europe. Europe is probably already in a recession. If not, it's very likely they're going to be in a very small recession. But if the Eurozone sovereign debt problems are managed poorly, this small recession in Europe explodes and expands and begins to affect the U.S. and is sufficient to draw down the U.S. What you have is you have a highly productive, well-educated workforce in Minnesota that allows you to make money here when you can't make money elsewhere. And you know, that's the explanation. Firms look around and see where their most productive plants are, where their most productive workers are, and lay them off last. And I think that's what's gone on.